Well, here is New Game Review's third compilation video, and this one we're going to be seeing Cannon Fodder, Rockstar Ate My Hamster, Sensible World of Soccer, Lotus Turbo Challenge, and Speedball 2 on the Amiga. Enjoy.
1993 was a good year to be a computer game fan here in the UK. The Super Nintendo and Mega Drive were gaining momentum, and the Commodore and Atari's range of 16-bit computers, the Amiga and the ST, were causing all those memorable arguments in schoolyards up and down the country about who had the best system. The Super Nintendo had classic games such as Super Mario World, and in my opinion the best version of Street Fighter 2. The Mega Drive had fast-paced arcade action games such as Sonic the Hedgehog and Streets of Rage. However, the Amiga and the ST had killer apps of their own, and today we're going to be looking at one of them. Here is New Games review of Cannon Fodder on the Amiga. Now then, I was an Amiga gamer back in the day and would swap discs with my friends. If you had the correct know-how and the correct software, you could amass a huge library of inverted commas backup games. However, Cannon Fodder was the one I had in a retail box. The game was developed by Sensible Software. It came after the release of Megalomania and Sensible Soccer. They wanted to stay strictly to a six-man operation, designing games that were easy to pick up but hard to put down. Using this format, and under lead designer John Hare and programmer Jules Jameson, Cannon Fodder was released on the Amiga in December 1993. Arriving packaged on 3 discs, I remember multi-disc games. Anyway, this game was a military strategy and shoot 'em up game. You controlled the 5 soldiers and kill enemies to progress to the next level. You move your army around using the mouse and click wherever you want to go. Right mouse fires, and the left-right combo fires any grenades or rocket you may have. To progress to the next level you have to complete whatever challenges await you, usually eliminating all the enemies or destroy all the bases, or both. If you don't start off with any, you can collect grenades or rockets to use as you go through the levels, but watch out, if you shoot the crates or drums that these come in, if you stand too close, you're gonna die. Your army has the same energy as your enemies, i.e. one shot and you're dead. However, your enemies start off rather slow and easy to kill, but they soon rank up as the levels progress. They end up with bazookas and vehicles to drive to get to you. The game is split over 23 missions with sub-phases to complete, giving you a 72 level monster to deal with. They are set out over jungle, beaches and winter levels. They all have their own unique pitfalls. If you walk in the river for example, your troops move really slow and you can't fire, so it's best to check who's coming before you head in there. When you complete your mission, you go back to the main screen where you got told who has died in action and who are your heroes. You also see how many more troops you've got signed up for the next missions. They all line up alongside a hill full of the graves of your dead heroes. The longer you manage to keep them alive, the more elaborate the headstones. Mention Cannon Fodder to anybody from a certain age group and what they'll mention to you is a theme tune. This plays when you boot the game up, and here we go, here it is for you to now to relive it. This also gives you a rundown of the game's designers and in usual Sensible Soccer humour, some funny headshots. This game was mad in controversy when it was released, with some papers, the Daily Star being one of them, up in arms saying it glamorises war and makes fun of the sacrifice that people make. The designers stood by their game. They stood by the fact they gave the soldiers individual names and graves, as it shows that people die and their names mean they have not just been sacrificed. The producers then went on to say, "I'm only happy with this one because it makes you think yes, people really die." The poppy symbol was supposed to adorn the box cover, but this was replaced so not to cause offence to the Royal British Legion. The game magazine Amiga Power became part of the controversy by using the poppy to promote the game. The episode that this was due to be released in was supposed to be released on Armistice Day. The magazine eventually apologised, and the Cannon Fodder box art upon release was different. Amiga Computing then reported that publicity they received from this was possibly the best advertising campaign Virgin Media could have hoped for. The game was eventually ported to various computers and consoles. For example, here's the box art for the Super Nintendo or even the CD32. However, in my opinion the Amiga version was the best. All the speech and graphics were there, and this was the format the game was designed for. The point and click mechanics work well and they fit the game nicely. If you haven't played this game, I'd recommend you pick it up because, like they say, war really has never been so much fun. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Noob Game Reviews. There is a genre of games out there called simulation strategies, and there are plenty of types of them. You could manage a football team, you could control a city, you could even control somebody's life. But have you ever wanted to manage a rock group? Well, now you can. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Noob's game review of Rockstar Ate My Hamster on the Amiga. Back in 1988, a game designer, Colin Jones, created Rockstar Ate My Hamster. The name was inspired by the 1986 Sun headline, Freddy Star Ate My Hamster. The game was released on the Codemasters label on such formats as the Amstrad CPC, the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, the Atari, and this version we're looking at today, the Amiga. The plot, such as it is that Cecil Pitt and his sidekick Clive want to get out of the circus business, and they use the £50,000 inheritance Clive has got to kickstart their music manager business. The game is menu driven, and you control the day-to-day goings-on of a Rockstar manager. You start by picking your group, up to 4 stars can make your supergroup, and all the Rockstars are rip-offs of real-life stars of the time. This is 1988, remember, with names such as Bill Collins, Elvin Dwight, and Scratch and Sniffer. All have a weekly wage, and this needs to be taken into account when creating your group, because if you go bankrupt, it's game over. After naming your supergroup, you can choose what equipment to arm your stars with, either brand new, second hand, or dodgy. Whatever you pick, a little later on down the line, you either get stolen or confiscated anyway, so it doesn't really make any difference. Then it's into your main menu. The first option is you can send your group practicing, which they need to do to get better. Now this does actually make your band play better, then when you get onto gigging, the crowd go away a lot happier. You can go on tour, and this is the game's money making scheme. You can choose the venues, you choose the price per ticket and how many days you're going to go on tour for, then it's off you go. Clive will then give you a rundown every day of how many tickets you sold and a soundbite plays to let you know how happy the crowd is. It is better to start off with low prices and low venues, otherwise it will cost you more to put on the tour than what you actually make back. Eventually you'll be paying packed out stadiums at £20 a ticket. During these tours, your Rockstar Divas will then give you ideas to make the gig better. You can agree, if you've got the money, or you can decline, in Cecil's own unique way. But this usually ends up with the Rockstar giving you an ultimatum and quitting the band if these are not met. You can choose to throw a publicity stunt, and there is high risk attached to this, as if it goes right, then your ticket sales increase, but if the worst can happen, one of your Rockstars could actually die. Remember, you only start with 4, and if they all leave or they die, it's game over. Some of the headlines in this section caused complaints to W.H. Smith, and this ended up with the company pulling the games from the shelves. Giving gifts to your stars helps keep them sweet, and this stops them from making demands later on in the game. They range from various prices, but again remember, you don't want to be going bankrupt if you run out of money. After a month or so you are offered a recording deal. After accepting this, you went to the recording studio and record your album. A randomly generated song is played and you can name the song. Then you eventually name your album. Note here, if you have got too much money when you record, you get held to ransom to recover the master tapes. Then, this is the time when you can start releasing your masterpieces. You choose your single to release, only one at a time remember, we're not Ed Sheeran we're managing. You can choose to record a music video and pick your director, venue and theme. Every choice affects the chance it has of becoming a smash hit. You can then release your album, named whatever you want, and now it's a case of repeating, gigging and promotions until Sunday night and the charts come in. During the chart, you are given a rundown of the top 10. Hopefully your band will feature somewhere. If your single does well, then your album will chart. Your album only ever moves up or down one place at a time. If your single is in the top 8, your album will climb. Any lower and it will take a drop. The platinum albums are gained by album sales, so don't let it drop out the top 10 as it takes some weeks to re-enter. So strategy is involved when deciding on releasing your next smash hit. All the other acts are parodies of chart acts at the time, and some of them are quite funny. I mean, who wouldn't want to listen to Def Leppard's next single? There are other aspects that affect record and gig sales. You will from time to time be offered charity gigs. This is a game of chance if you accept or not. If it's a legitimate charity, well done. If not, bad publicity will follow, gig revenue and sales will take a dip. You are offered sponsorship and the money is tempting, however, later on in the game these always end up with the sponsor being involved in some controversy. Again, this affects your sales. You will also at some point find out that an organisation in Korea is bootlegging your music, and whatever choice you make to deal with that, it's going to cost you money. It's then a case of rinse and repeating, trying to keep your album in the charts long enough to gain the 4 platinum discs to win the game. It's not easy, the most I've ever done is 2, and I have played this game a lot. The graphics are good enough, nothing much happens, and the music is well put together, but you don't play these kind of games for either one of those things. It's funny, entertaining, and it will keep you going for a long time. Rockstar Ate My Hamster is a cult classic. It's one of those games you have either never heard of or played it to death. I was definitely in the latter category. Ever since I've seen it reviewed back in Amstrad Action, I saved up all my pocket money and spent the $8.99 a copy in Boots. Happy days. So there you have it. It's great. It's one of my favourites. I hope it's one of yours. So from New Game Reviews, thank you and good night. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Noob Game Reviews.
Any teenager that went to school in the mid-90s, had a passing interest in football, and had access to one of the 16-bit computers of the time, played sensible soccer. No doubt about it, it was the best football simulation on the formats. Sensible Software managed to combine the insane playability and maintain the simple formula of one button to do everything. The game took a great deal of skill to play, and as far as anyone could see, it wasn't going to be bettered. The other football games of the time couldn't compete with Sensible Soccer's all-round brilliance. Then, in 1994, Sensible Software did someone no one thought possible. They improved the game, and today, Noob's Game Review is of Sensible World Soccer on the Amiga. From the get-go, it's important to know that this, along with its various updates, was one of the 3 games that were on consistent rotation at my house in the 90s, along with Cannon Fodder and Championship Manager, the latter to be covered at a later date. Sensible World of Soccer sucked me and many others in, and it just wouldn't let go. The insane amount of leagues and competitions available, the game's mechanics, the different abilities of the players, and the manager mode made this the football game to have. Henry Lowood, curator of the History of Science and Technology collections in Stanford University, combined the list of the 10 most important video games of all time. Sensible World of Soccer was included on this list. It was the only game in the list that was developed in Europe, it was the only sports game, and it was the most recently released. So, upon loading the game, you are greeted with the usual Sensible Software musical brilliance. Just take a listen to this theme tune. Then you're into the options screen. Here, you can edit everything from the teams to the tactics. The team editor gives you a glimpse into Sensible Software's development of the game, naming the players in various teams after dwarfs, for example, or the various deadlines that they had for the game. I'm also guessing one of the developers was a Liverpool fan with an all-time starting 11 in there as well. You can play with the friendly options, or you can set up your own competition, or you can play one of the predefined tournaments. If you choose the World Cup, just remember that England didn't qualify for the tournament in '94, so you'll have to manually put them in. Do I not like that? All this mirrors the previous games, however the real star of the show is the career mode. Here you choose to guide a team from the thousands available from all over the globe, from the English Premiership down to really basic poor leagues like the Scottish Premiership. All the real players are here. Not sure you could do that with the game these days with licenses and stuff, but I bet the research that must have gone into this, it was mind-boggling at the time. Then it's onto the main screen for this mode. Here you can scroll and see your fixtures. The different competitions are in different colours. You've got the squad button, which shows your squad and the values of the players in your squad. You've got the transfer market, but more on that later. Club business gives you a rundown of your funds, and competition shows you the information about the competitions that you're involved with. The transfer market is really in depth. You can choose to browse players on the transfer list. Or you can choose to go for any player in the world. You can search for them by team and then go and have a look at the squad. If they're in your price range, this was 1994 remember, when Alan Shearer was in his prime, you can even try to buy a Man United player for Liverpool. I always did like Andrei Kanchelskis. There's no contract negotiations. If you've got enough money, they come to you. You can also offer to exchange players as well to bump up the price. If you want to offload players, Nigel Clough anyone? You place them on the market and other clubs can bid for them. Once on the market, you are warned after matches if anybody's interested. You can choose to outright reject them, you can accept them, or you can even haggle the price. You do need to balance the books. If you stay in the negative for too long, you'll get sacked. Winning competitions gets you money, or you might actually be forced to sell one of your star players. Then it's on to the games, and this is where Sensible World of Soccer comes into its own. Anyone having played the original, this will be like slipping into your favourite 90s global hypercolour t-shirt. It's a one button does all affair, where tapping will pass and holding longer will shoot. You can lob, put curve on the ball, or head of the ball if it's in the air. In this game though, the individual player skill really shows. Alan Shearer is going to be 100 times better than a striker from the low leagues. Like you can see here, David James is having a hard time keeping the SAS quiet. There are the usual football issues. You get yellow and red cards, there's penalties, free kicks, and your players can even get injured. These will all affect your team. A bad injury could sideline your players for the season if it's nasty, and getting sent off will suspend your player for as many as 3 games. You then play through the season, progressing through the cup competitions and league system, hoping that you manage to exceed the expectations of the board. As you approach the end of the season, you start getting job offers for the season after. You can choose to accept them or stay where you are. The better you do, the better the offers. At the end of the season, the game shows you the results and the winners of all the leagues around the world. Now, go make a coffee, this does take some time. Then the game restarts in the next season. You get 20 seasons to work your way through. Eventually you'll be offered a national job and you try and win the World Cup. After 20 seasons, the game ends. One of the only down points. It could have done with going on forever. I don't know why they limited it to 20 seasons. The amount of leagues and options, players and tournaments available keeps this game fresh and offers a different challenge every time you play. I remember swapping stories of unknown strikers from various leagues that were just rubbish, but each to their own. The game did have a couple of seasonal updates, and these added new features, for example a career history section where you can see your accomplishments and trophies alongside other information. Altogether there were 3 updates alongside the original Sensible World of Soccer game. It has also had re-releases over the years, but we don't talk about the PlayStation 2 version. They were poor, and honestly they were a travesty to the Sensible Soccer name. The version we've looked at today still remains one of the best football simulations out there. It doesn't rely on complicated button combinations to pull up a simple move, unlike other game franchises we can mention. And this is football at its best, and maybe, if you play it, you could also be a goal-scoring superstar hero. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Noob Game Reviews. Here at Noob Towers love a racing game. In fact, our last upload was one of the classic cartoon races, but today's offering is slightly more simulation based. This was requested by one of our subscribers, so here we have it. Here's Noob's game review of Lotus Turbo Challenge on the Amiga. Released in 1990 under the Gremlin Graphics label, Magnetic Fields produced one of the memorable games from this time period. It went on to spawn 2 sequels, however, when this was released, the fans were wowed. The game was developed with full cooperation from the Lotus mechanics, and in the pre-game attract mode you get all sorts of data about the vehicle, how it will behave, fuel consumption, and other bits of information far too technical for me to understand. There are very basic options. You can choose your control mechanic. I always favoured a button to accelerate rather than the up key, manual or automatic gears, and you can enter your name. A little Easter egg here is if you change the player 1 and player 2 names to those on screen right now and start the game, you are rewarded with a little game of asteroids. A fun little distraction. However, a fun little game of asteroids is not what we paid £19.99 for back in the day. So, after choosing your difficulty, you get the chance to pick your soundtrack. You've got one of 4 songs to pick and that plays continuously through your game. It would have been nice to choose a different track in between the tracks, if you see what I mean, but that option's not there, so we've got what we've got. Before each race you were given a little information about the track you were about to face. Notice the parody names of racing drivers at the time. The bottom of the screen gives you a little information about what to watch out for, and then it's race time. The game has an obvious connection to the luxury car maker Lotus, so don't expect any other car types other than a Lotus Esprit. It's a basic race to the finish line around various courses, each with their own unique obstacles and environments to battle against. If you finish in the top 10, you move on to the next race, outside the top 10, and it's game over. As you will see from these images, I'm playing in the 1-player mode, because I've got no mates. But in 2-player mode you play a split screen. A nice inclusion would have been if the screen was full when playing in 1 player, but you can't have everything I suppose. The cars get up to speed and you soon find yourself flying around the track at speeds well over 150 mph, and the graphics and cars look fantastic. You do get a real sense of speed as the trees and billboards whip by. You soon find yourself flying around corners and up hills at breakneck speed. Your opponents basically only seem to be there to get in your way, and they will do anything in their power to block your path. There's no real indication of which racer you are facing against, so you'll have to wait until the final standing screens to see how well you've all done. Each stage has slight differences. You race in different countries and they are all well represented, but I do take issue with England having a lot of closed lanes on the roads. I mean, that doesn't happen, does it? And does Spain really have a lot of rocks you have to avoid when driving? Answers on the postcard please. Anyway, these all add to the gameplay and give it a little extra spice to the proceedings. There is also an element of strategy to take into account. Your fuel drops as you fly around the track, and choosing when to pit will decide how you finish. As you can see, on my first attempt I had trouble figuring out how to do it. A quick Google search showed me that you just have to stop in the appropriate lane. Simple when you know how. If you run out of fuel, it's game over, so keep an eye on that gauge and get pitting. After each race you are given a breakdown of placings, and if you hit the top 10 you moved on to the next race and carry on. The 3 skill levels and practice modes mean this game does have some longevity. The second and third instalments do take the game forward by quite a long way, however I did find myself enjoying this game. Amiga Action awarded this game 88% and you can see why. It is presented great with some great background music, the graphics fit the game well. If only we had a full screen mode. So, if you have a game you'd like me to take a look at, put a comment below. But for now, thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Noob Game Reviews. Speedball 2 is one of those games that everyone trots out as being one of the best of all time. It always features highly on them lists of best games on the systems. But should it be there? Was it all just hype? Well, here on N.V.G.R we aim to find out, so here we go. Here's N.V.G.'s review of Speedball 2 on the Amiga. Speedball 2, Brutal Deluxe, to give the game its complete title, was released in 1990. It was developed by the Bitmap Brothers and is the sequel to the 1988 game Speedball. The Bitmap Brothers were a UK-based development company. They developed games such as Xenon, Gods, the Chaos Engine, and of course Speedball. They are known for their high quality but difficult games. They had a really strong fan base in the 16-bit Amiga and Atari ST community. When Speedball was a success, it was always going to happen that a sequel would come about, and in 1990 Speedball 2 Brutal Deluxe hit the shops. Let's see what all the fuss was about. The screen is a top-down view of a futuristic game. The plot of this title says the original Speedball League failed due to violence and corruption. The game is set in the year 2105 with the all-new Speedball 2 League, and there's a new team to try and reign supreme, Brutal Deluxe, who as player 1 you are in charge of. So you play the game, which is a cross between handball and hockey. You can barge your opponents off the ball, you can slide tackle them and generally be as violent as you like. There are goals at either end, and scoring a basic goal awards you 10 points. There are multipliers on the side of the pitch that can increase each goal to 15 or 20. With 9 players on each team you can sustain injuries and substitutes can be used. The game is frantic, don't expect any subtlety in the build-up play, it's a basic smash and grab, outlive your opponents and win. Each match lasts 180 seconds and that's plenty enough. You need a breather in between the halves and at the end of the game to compose yourself ready for the next challenge. You can play a knockout league or cup, and depending which one you choose depends how long you're going to be playing the game for. Lose a knockout or cup match and it's game over. A league sees you keep playing until the end of the season. You can upgrade your players to increase their speed, power and stamina for example, and you gain money to upgrade through playing matches. The longer you play, the more you win, the more you can upgrade. The graphics are good, the players and pitches are well animated and colourful. As usual in a Bitmap Brothers game, the music plays along in the background and adds atmosphere to the brutality of the game. There's no complaints there. The game has been re-released and upgraded throughout the years, with the most recent being Speedball 2 HD for the PC, available on Steam. And that's pretty much all there is to say. The game is fast paced, good for a thrash with your friends or against the computer. And unless I've missed something obvious, I'm struggling to see the hype in it. Yeah, I had fun playing the different modes and upgrading the players as such, but there was nothing there to warrant the outpouring of love the game gets even to this day. Don't get me wrong, it's well presented, graphically there's nothing wrong and it sounds great and it plays just as good, but I'm not astounded by the game. I really don't want to come across like I'm bashing the game in any way, but it does seem very run-of-the-mill for the Amiga at the time. Still, it wasn't terrible and it did kill a few hours for us. That's all for this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe and I'll see you next time on N.V.G. Game Reviews.